Ready for an interesting one today. We're diving deep into a blog post. And, it's kind of wild how it connects ancient wisdom and modern science, We're going to be talking about the human nervous system. Like, what if it's like a banyan tree?
Yeah, it's amazing how this metaphor, comes from ancient Hindu philosophy, but kind of feels strangely relevant to like modern neurobiology.
Right, totally. So the author, Natu, they kick things off with this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, the 15th chapter. It's originally in Sanskrit, so let's hear it first in Sanskrit, and then we'll break down the English translation.
ऊर्ध्वमूलमधःशाखम् अश्वत्थं प्राहुरव्ययम् छन्दांसि यस्य पर्णानि यस्तं वेद स वेदवित्.
Okay, so in English it says, whose roots are situated above with the trunk and branches spreading below, they aver, such a banyan tree is imperishable, whose leaves are but its meter and prosody, one who knows this and its intricacies is the knower of all. Like, even the English translation has like this kind of poetic, mysterious vibe. But what I found really interesting is how Natu goes beyond the traditional interpretations and connects it to like the human nervous system.
Yeah, it's a very unique perspective. I mean, usually people interpret this verse metaphorically, like talking about the illusion of reality or life and death cycles.
Yeah.
But Natu sees this direct connection between how the banyan tree is structured and how our nervous systems are organized, which is really cool.
It's like finding a hidden anatomical illustration right there in the verse. Like when you picture a banyan tree in your mind, it's almost like a flipped image of how we normally imagine the nervous system, isn't it?
Exactly. Think about it. The banyan tree's roots, they grow up above, right?
Hmm.
And the branches reach downwards, and then they've got those aerial roots that kind of anchor it to the ground. So then imagine the human brain as like the root in this metaphor.
Okay, so if the brain is like the root system, then the spinal cord, because it extends down from the brain, that becomes the trunk, right? And then all the nerves branching out throughout the body, those are like the branches. Wow, it's amazing how this visual analogy just kind of falls into place.
And like a banyan tree, I mean, they can get massive, right? Supported by this whole network of aerial roots. And our nervous system, it's kind of like that, this interconnected web that allows us to experience and interact with everything around us.
Natu also points out something else kind of cool about banyan trees. They're epiphytes, which means they often grow on other plants.
Hmm.
And they connect that to this idea of the soul, the jiva, living within the physical body, the sharira bija.
It's like the banyan tree, representing the soul, finds its home on this host tree, which is the body. And this is where Natu's interpretation gets really interesting. They ask, what if the banyan tree's leaves, which the verse describes as meter and prosody, what if they represent something more? What if they're like all of the communication happening within our nervous system?
Whoa, that's a pretty wild thought. The leaves as messengers carrying information through this complex network of the nervous system. What are your thoughts on that from like a neuroscientific point of view?
Yeah, it's a pretty cool idea when you think about it. Like those leaves, right, rustling in the wind, and each one is like this little messenger carrying information throughout the tree. And our nervous system, it's kind of similar, this like bustling network with signals constantly going back and forth between the brain and the rest of the body.
It really brings this whole intricate system to life when you picture it like that. But okay, so if we're saying these leaves represent communication in the nervous system, how does that connect to the whole idea of knowledge, which is like a big deal in the Bhagavad Gita?
That's where this metaphor gets really interesting, I think. So Natu talks about how those leaves and aerial roots, remember those, they could be seen as like the peripheral nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, even the neuroendocrine system, all those parts of the nervous system that are outside of the brain and spinal cord, reaching every part of us.
So instead of just thinking about the brain as the source of all knowledge, we're looking at this whole vast network that's constantly gathering and sending information, right?
Exactly. All these systems are in constant contact with the brain, sending all these signals based on what we're experiencing with our senses. Every sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, it all gets processed through this incredible web of nerves, and it informs how we understand the world.
So it's like our senses are constantly feeding information back to the brain, like those leaves carrying messages to the roots, right? And this constant flow shapes how we see the world around us.
Right. And just like a banyan tree's leaves change with the seasons, our experiences, they affect and reshape our nervous systems over time. And this is where Natu brings in the idea of karma and how it connects to how our nervous system works, which is super interesting.
Okay, hold on. Now my mind is officially blown. We're connecting ancient Indian philosophy about actions and consequences to, like, neuroscience.
It's all connected, right? The Bhagavad Gita, it says that our actions come from how we understand the world. And Natu suggests that this understanding comes from the constant flow of information in our nervous system, which is shaped by our experiences. Every choice we make, every action, it's all rooted in this dance between what we perceive with our senses and how our nervous system reacts to it.
So our nervous systems are being shaped by what we experience, and those experiences then shape our actions and their consequences, which is karma. It's like this crazy feedback loop.
Totally. It shows how interconnected our inner and outer worlds are. They're constantly affecting and shaping each other. And this brings us to something else really interesting that Natu points out about banyan trees.
Yeah,
They can live for hundreds of years.
right. That's amazing. They're like this powerful symbol of something that lasts, something that goes beyond a single lifetime.
And if we're thinking of the banyan tree as this metaphor for our nervous system, it makes you think, what is it about the human brain that gives it so much potential for knowledge and understanding? I mean, it's kind of incredible.
It really makes you realize how much we don't know, you know? Like we've come so far with neuroscience, but the brain, I mean, billions of neurons, trillions of connections, it's like we're still just scratching the surface.
Yeah, totally. And every time we discover something new, it just seems like it gets even more complex, more mysteries to solve. It really shows you how massive and intricate consciousness and knowledge and, the whole human experience really are.
And Natu seems to be saying that the Bhagavad Gita verse, it hints at this incredible complexity, this vastness inside of us, like where it says, one who knows this and its intricacies is the knower of all.
That's such a powerful statement, right? It's like it's suggesting that somewhere in the structure of our nervous system, in the way the neurons and neurotransmitters interact, there's a path to a much deeper kind of knowledge, like a map inside us that we just need to figure out how to read.
It makes you wonder, like, what if we could actually understand all the complexities of our own nervous system? What would we discover? What kind of understanding would that open up to?
Maybe, like Netu says, understanding how our own inner world works, how what we experience shapes our nervous systems and our actions, maybe that's the key to understanding ourselves and the world around us on a much deeper level.
That is mind-blowing, honestly. So if you had to pick one thing, one takeaway from this whole deep dive, what would it be?
For me, the most interesting part of all of this is that it makes you want to look inward. It's like we always talk about exploring the outside world to find knowledge, but maybe it's also about understanding this incredible universe that we each have within us.
It's like that saying, know thyself, but it's not just a philosophical idea anymore. It feels like we're getting closer to actually understanding what that means scientifically.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe as we learn more and more about neuroscience, we'll find even more connections to ancient wisdom, and we can finally bridge that gap between what we know and what we don't know about ourselves.
It's such a cool thought to end on. And for our listeners, if you want to explore this even more, check out Natu's full blog post, Krishna's Cup of Cognition, Is Neuroscience the Missing Metaphor? You can find the link in the show notes. That's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those synapses firing.